الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We continue inshallah ta'ala with the book of الروض المربع, and we're still in صفة الصلاة and the things still in the makruhat, and the makruh matters in the salah, mentioning many of them, and many of them are related to one another because of the aspect of al-khushu'. So anything that affects the khushu', the devotion in the salah, the ulama mentioned many examples that shows that it's makruh. So that's why many of them might not have a specific dalil or evidences to it, but it's because it's something that can distract the person during the salah. So we start on the top of page 270 by saying ويكره تكرار الفاتحة لأنه لم ينقل. ويكره, what's makruh, تكرار الفاتحة. تكرار, that means to repeat سورة الفاتحة. From كرر يكرر, that means to repeat سورة الفاتحة لأنه لم ينقل. This is not something that has been passed from the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. That means there's no dalil to it, there's no evidence to it whatsoever, and even it can lead to the salah to be تبطل, to invalidate the salah. It might lead to this. So it's in the category of makruh, because if there is exceptions, then it is not mentioned to be haram from the very first instant. Meaning, if someone did not recite Surah Al-Fatiha, then of course, or he is in doubt this is something else, or he missed an ayah, for example, then he need to repeat Surah Al-Fatiha. And again, these things, it's rarely to happen, and a person has to be very watchful of the waswas. We're not talking about someone has waswas, someone has compulsion and whispers and things like this. This is a disease. So the rulings does not apply for someone that has a condition. But for the sake of understanding the mas'ala here, or the matter here, sometimes the examples are extreme to understand what it means. Not that this something that a person would allow for himself for that to happen. If, because Al-Fatiha is a pillar of the Salah, if someone for sure missed an ayah in Surah Al-Fatiha, and he's now in the second rak'ah, and he was told, or whatever he discovered, that he did not recite a verse in Surah Al-Fatiha. That means this rak'ah that he prayed is not valid. So you have to make up the rak'ah at the end. Or while he's reciting Surah Al-Fatiha, someone's still learning, maybe he doesn't know it, so he missed an ayah, for example, then he would repeat Surah Al-Fatiha. But to make repetition of Surah Al-Fatiha like this for no reason, thinking I did not have khushu' in it, like that, this is not permissible, and that's what is closer to be, as the ulama they say. But he says ويكره تكرار الفاتحة. So if someone wants to repeat Surah Al-Fatiha to get more rewards, to have more khushu', that's not permissible to do that. The Prophet ﷺ never done that, never commanded the people to do this. And even if a person does not remember even a word of what he said, as long as he says it, that means this is sufficient. So this is لأنه لم ينقل. There's no narration, there's no evidence to this. ولا يكره جمع سور في صلاة فرض كنفل. Now ولا يكره, it's not makruh to make جمع, to add or to recite more than one surah. Surah is the plural. So it's not makruh to combine more than one surah في صلاة فرض كنفل. In صلاة الفرض, the same way that it is for صلاة النفل. In one rak'ah. So if someone, after reciting Surah Al-Fatiha, he recited more than one surah, this is not makruh. This is not makruh. And this is not just in the nafl, because the evidence is more is in the nafl, but also in the fard. He says لما في الصحيح, because in the صحيح أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, and this is hadith in Sahih Muslim and others, أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قرأ في ركعة من قيامه بالبقرة وآل عمران والنساء. That the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم recited in one rak'ah in his qiyam al-layl, Surah Al-Baqarah and Surah Al Imran and Surah Al-Nisa, the three surahs in one rak'ah. And there is the statement of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, and this is also in Sahih Muslim, that he knows, he says, كنت أعرف النظائر التي كان يقرأ بهن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. I used to know النظائر that the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام would combine in the salah. And he mentioned these nada'ir, that the Prophet ﷺ would pray oftentimes or sometimes with two surahs in one rak'ah. And they are nada'ir, that means they are close in meanings. In one rak'ah, and then the second rak'ah, two surahs, and so on. So that's why لا يكره. It is not makruh جمع صور في صلاة فرض كنفل. Fard also is like the nafl. And the reason why he said في صلاة فرض كنفل, because the evidences are more in the nafl. So that's why to remove this doubt, he said also في صلاة فرض, and the fard is like the nafl in this ruling. Then he says ويسن له, يسن, that means it's recommended, له, for أي للمصلي, to the musalli, رد المار بين يديه. رد is to reject, that means to push away, to stop. Al-Mar, the one that passes in front of him. Al-Mar, Al-Murur is to pass in front of something, is to pass. So بين يديه, between his hands, that means in front of him. This is with regards to the sutra and things like this. The word here that is used is yusan. And in some of the books also in the madhab, yubah, meaning that it's in the sense that it's permissible. But as the ulama, they say that because of the hadith that is even mentioned, it's aqrab ila al-wujub. It's closer to be mandatory upon a person to do that. ويسن له أي للمصلي رد المار بين يديه, to stop the one that is going to pass in front of him. لقوله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا كان أحدكم يصلي فلا يدعن أحدا يمر بين يديه فإن أبى فليقاتله فإن معه القرين. رواه مسلم عن ابن عمر. The hadith means that if one of you is making salah فلا يدعن أحدا, he should not let anyone whatsoever to pass in front of him. فإن أبى, if he refuses, you try to stop him, but he refuses, فليقاتله. يقاتله means force him not to pass. The meaning of يقاتله, fight him, meaning that you stop him by force, not to walk in front of you. فإن معه القرين, because indeed with him is the qarin meaning the shaitan. So do not allow him to pass in front of you. And as you see, the hadith is more of a mandatory thing upon the musalli. It's haram for the one that passes in front of the musalli, if he's aware of what he's doing, and there's exceptions, is going to be mentioned inshallah ta'ala. But here the musalli is the one that is being addressed. So by this statement, so that means it's closer to be wajib, mandatory upon the musalli, not to allow people to walk in front of him when he's making salah. Whether he has a sutra or not. If he has a sutra, of course, the matter is obvious. People, if they walk beyond the sutra, the thing that he has in front of him that he prays to, then this is fine, this is permissible. But if it's between him and the sutra, that's not permissible, and he should stop them. If he doesn't have sutra, also to where his hands can reach, he also should stop a person walking in front of him. He says, وَسَوَاءٌ كَانَ الْمَارُّ آدَمِيًّا أَوْ غَيْرَهُ. Whether al-mar, this is the individual that is passing in front of him, whether he is Adami, al-Adami, that means human being from the sons of Adam, أو غيره, or other than the human beings. Animal, for example, if it passes by, he should stop it, or he should, as the Prophet ﷺ did, he would step forward to the sutra so that this animal does not have a space to pass in front. It would pass behind him. And the same thing with the child, because it is much shorter than the musalli, so he cannot reach him. So then he can step forward to block the way, and then they can pass behind him. والصلاة فرضا أو نفلا. الصلاة, whether it's فرض or نفل, بين يديه سترة فمر دونها أو لم تكن فمر قريبا منه. So whether this is a human being or not, whether the salah is fard or nafl, all the same. Between him, sutra, between the person passing and the person, means he has a sutra, فمر دونها. مر دونها, that means he passed before the sutra, between him and the sutra. أو لم تكن فمر قريبا منه. The same rules apply if there's no sutra, but the man passed قريبا منه, near by the musalli, where he can reach him to stop him. So this is, so again, to musalli, yusannu, or even wajib, according to the other opinion, to push or to stop the mar, or the one that breaks his or walks in front of him while making salah. He says ومحل ذلك ما لم يغلبه أو يكن المار محتاجا للمرور أو بمكة. Now these three exceptions where the stopping the person walking in front of you when you're making salah, you don't have to. ما لم يغلبه, if he defeats you, that means he was stronger than you, and he passed, or he passed without you, before you even pay attention to stop him. So if he passed, you don't, in the salah, you don't grab him after he passed. He passed. It's already over. So ما لم يغلبه, that means he already passed against your own will. So that means you don't stop him then. أو the second one, أو يكن المار محتاجا للمرور. Or the mar, or the person walking in front of the musalli, he is in need to pass in front of him. There's a need. And this, whatever the need is, like for example, people will have a stampede, and the person making salah is right by the door, and the door is right there, and he's blocking the door for the people, and the only way for them to walk is to walk in front of him. So that means they are not to be blamed, because this is going to cause difficulty for them. So, but a person has to be not at ease with this matter. Not everybody would say, I have a need, I have to go to work, this and that. People should not walk in front of anyone that is making salah. أو بمكة. The third one is in Mecca. And Mecca is an exception here, because the nature, as the ulama they say, of al-Masjid al-Haram and the tawaf and the crowdedness. So and there's an evidence, actually, this is the wisdom behind, but there's an evidence where the Prophet ﷺ, and this is in Surah Nisa and others, the ulama they mention it here in this place, that the Prophet ﷺ صلى بالحجر, he was praying by the Hijr and by the Kaaba, وَالنَّاسُ يَمُرُّونَ بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ, the people were passing in front of the Prophet ﷺ. So they mentioned that this is an exception for Mecca. أو بمكة. And this is not just in the Masjid al-Haram, in Mecca, because the nature of Mecca. So ويحرم المرور بين المصلي, and as the ulama they say also, it doesn't mean that a person should walk in front of anyone that is making salah in Mecca when the haram is empty, for example. He should not intentionally do this, but it's not as if it's in a different place. So that's why if a person is making salah and people are coming to cross in front of him, he can step forward to prevent them from crossing in front of him, but he should not try to stop them and fight with them. This is not to be done. But if he steps forward so that they walk behind him, this is better for him to do so. But if they pass in front of him, there's no harm. He says, وَيَحْرُمُ الْمُرُورُ بَيْنَ الْمُصَلِّ وَسُتْرَتِهِ وَلَوْ بَعِيدًا. Now, after mentioning what the musalli should do, he should stop the person walking in front of him. Now, other than the musalli. وَيَحْرُمُ, it's haram for the person to walk in front of a musalli. وَيَحْرُمُ الْمُرُورُ بَيْنَ الْمُصَلِّ وَسُتْرَتِهِ, between the musalli and his sutra. وَلَوْ بَعِيدًا, even if the sutra is a little bit far. Because the sutra is supposed to be near, but if he made it a little bit far, not too far, of course, because if it's too far, it doesn't look like it's a sutra for him. So it has to be, this is his sutra, but it's a little bit far from him. It's haram for a person to walk between that musalli and his sutra. وَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ sutra. What if he doesn't have sutra? Where can the person walk in front of him? How far from the musalli can he walk in front of him? He says, فَفِي ثَلَاثَةِ أَذْرُعٍ فَأَقَلٍ. In ثلاثة أذرع. The ulama in fiqh, they try always to make things as precise as it can be, so that people are not unclear of where is exactly the limits for things. So when it's the urf, what is to be perceived, or it looks like someone is walking in front of a person, then he should not do this. But if it doesn't look like he's walking in front of him because he's far away from him, then there's no harm. But they mentioned this ثلاثة أذرع. Al-adhra is the plural of ذراع, arm. And it's usually like in meters is like half a meter. So it's usually ثلاثة أذرع, like meter and a half. فأقل, or less than that. وإن أبى, but again, there's no evidence to that. So it's what is meant is, in a further away distance so that it doesn't look like he's walking in front of him while he's making salah. وإن أبى المار الرجوع دفعه المصلي. If the mar, if the person passing, أبى, refused, دفعه, you try to stop him, he's refusing. دفعه. This is فليقاتله, then he should push him. He's, because the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, he said فليقاتله. فإن أصر فله قتاله. If he insists, then فله قتاله, then he has the right to fight with him. You have to stop him by force. ولو مشى, even if he walks away. فإن خاف فسادها لم يكرر دفعه ويضمنه. فإن خاف فسادها, if he feels that the salah will be invalid because too much movement, or he has to get physical with that person, then he should not repeat pushing him. لم يكرر دفعه ويضمنه. ويضمنه, that means الضمان is the guarantee. The meaning of الضمان in fiqh, as it will come inshallah ta'ala in the transactions, that means if something happened to that person, he wants to walk in front of him, he stopped him, he refused, so he pushed him, so he fell and he hurt his head, something like this. Who's responsible for it? He says ويضمن, meaning the musalli is responsible if this passing person get hurt. But if it as a result of pushing him more than one time. And others said, no, لا يضمنه, because the Prophet ﷺ said, فَلْيُقَاتِلْهُ. He did not do anything wrong because he fulfilled what the Prophet ﷺ said. But الضمان here, as some ulama, they mentioned, لو كرر دفعه. If he kept on repeating, pushing him, then this is where the daman, if he got hurt, then the daman, or the responsibility upon the musalli in this case. But if it's just one push and he fell, then he does not have any responsibility in that. But it's a debatable issue with this subject of daman, and as the ulama, they say, Sheikh Ibn Baz and others like this, when they say he did not do anything except what the Prophet ﷺ told him. So there's no daman on him. There's no daman on him unless he does something extreme. He says وَلِلْمُصَلِّ دَفْعُ الْعَدُوِّ مِنْ سَيْلٍ أَوْ سَبُعٍ أو سقوط جدار ونحوه وإن كثر لم تبطل في الأشهر قاله في المبتع. للمصلي, for the musalli to push away the enemy, من سيل أو سبع, whether it's flood coming, سبع, a lion or tiger, any harmful animal. So this is the musalli in the salah, and something like that happens. Whatever means he can have to protect himself, that does not invalidate the salah. أو سقوط جدار, or the wall falls, for example, or the like of this. Even if it would involve many actions. He might walk, he might run. That doesn't mean necessarily that he leaves the salah. Many people, they do not know that. They think if, for example, when something happened in a masjid, someone went stabbed an imam or something like this, so people left the salah. That's different, right? But if something earthquake, if people can run away or seek shelter and to be still in the salah, their salah is not going to be invalid. But if they leave the salah, there's no sin on them. But if they continue to be in the salah, even if they move, they walk, part of the masjid is falling, for example. So they would walk in an area where outside the masjid, and they're still in salah. Because this is an emergency or an exception, it does not invalidate the salah. But there's difference of opinion in this. And that's why he says, وَإِن كَثُرَ لَمْ تَبْطُلْ. If the movement is a lot, it does not invalidate the salah. فِي الْأَشْهَرِ, in what's more popular in the madhab as an opinion, قَالَهُ فِي الْمُبْتَعِ. That means there's other narration that the salah, in this case, becomes invalid and there's no sin. So this is دفع عدو من سيء أو سبع, or as mentioned. So this is with the sutra and things that happens to the musalli, تعرض للمصلي. Then he says وله عد الآي, وله عد الآي. عد is to count. Al-ay is the plural of ayat. That means if a person in salah counting the ayat, he can do that. Meaning it does not invalidate the salah. But of course, there's no need for it. But they mentioned that because of a hadith, but the hadith is weak. He says, what tasbih, to count the tasbih in the salah. Like in ruku', for example, he's counting, making how many tasbih, something like this. Or وتكبيرات العيد, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. بأصابعه. That does not invalidate the salah. He says, لما روى محمد بن خلف عن أنس رضي الله عنه رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يعقد الآية بأصابعه. He said that I saw the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم يعقد, folding his fingers, counting the ayat with his fingers. But this narration is weak. Weak, yes, it's weak. It's not authentic. But even though it's weak, it does not invalidate the salah, because the movement of it is not too much movement. And a person should not do that anyway, and there's no need for it. There was one video one time where an imam is counting the mad in the Quran. Like, was-sama, he's doing this. He's counting the mad to make sure that it's 5 counts in the salah. Yes. So there's no need for that, but it doesn't invalidate the salah. But there's no need for such a thing, of course. He says, وَلِلْمَأْمُومِ الْفَتْحُ عَلَى إِمَامِهِ. Now the subject of al-fath على الإمام, we'll take that, and inshallah won't take too long. The issue of the imam if he make a mistake in the salah. So وَلِلْمَأْمُومِ, for the ma'mum, al-fathu ala imam. Al-fath is to open, but here al-fath ala al-imam is to correct the imam while he is making salah, but mainly the recitation. If the imam makes a mistake in sujood and ruku', this is the tasbih for the men, and tasfiq for the nisa. But al-fath ala al-imam, this is with regards to the Quran recited. So وللمأموم الفتح على الإمام إذا ارتج أو أرتج عليه. No, he actually, what's correct is إذا أرتج عليه أو غلط. أرتج عليه, الرج is when something is shaking or something is closed. It's more of something that is when you close the door. So أرتج عليه, that means the matter has been shut down. He's not able to remember what's next. So إذا أرتج عليه أو غلط, or he made a mistake. Is it mandatory upon the ma'mum? No, it's not mandatory upon the ma'mum, as it's going to be mentioned later, but it's wajib if it's Surah Al-Fatiha. If it's Surah Al-Fatiha, it's wajib. إذا أرتج عليه أو غلط, or he made a mistake. لما روى أبو داود عن ابن عمر, the hadith أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم صلى صلاة فلبس عليه. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made the salah, so the matter was confused for the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam, meaning an ayah. فلما انصرف قال لأبي. So when the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam finished the salah, he said to Ubay ibn Ka'b, صليت معنا? Did you pray with us? قال نعم. He said yes. قال فما منعك? What prevent you? What stopped you from correcting me? So, and then the rest of the hadith says, how can I do that to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam? So قال الخطبي إسناده جيد. So this is with regards to الفتح على الإمام. ويجب في الفاتحة كنسيان سجدة. It's mandatory in Surah Al-Fatiha if he makes a mistake that changes the meaning, or he missed an ayah in Surah Al-Fatiha. And this is mandatory for the ma'mum, and it's exactly the same as if the imam forgot a sajda. He has to be reminded. ولا تبطل به. The salah is not invalid if the ma'mum corrects the imam. Why did he mention that? Because there is a very strange opinion that if the ma'mum corrects the imam, that invalidates the salah of the imam, or something like this. Of course, there's no evidence to that whatsoever. And the ma'mum salah does not also become invalid unless the ma'mum talks dunya words. And it happens sometimes that people would say things that is not from the words of the salah. ولا تبطل به ولو بعد أخذه في قراءة غيرها. The تبطل به here with regards to Surah Al-Fatiha. If he makes a mistake and he's corrected, then the salah is valid. ولو بعد أخذه في قراءة غيرها. Even if he start to recite something else after Surah Al-Fatiha, but he made a mistake in Surah Al-Fatiha, so the ma'mum should try to correct the imam, even if it's after reciting Surah Al-Fatiha ولو بعد أخذه في قراءة غيرها, because correcting Surah Al-Fatiha is wajib, but correcting what's mandatory in Surah Al-Fatiha, like missing a verse or something that completely changes the meaning. If someone that this is his capacity, even if it changes the meaning, there's no point of correcting him. Then whether the salah is valid or not, this is a difference of opinions. And Imam Malik and others, if it's valid for him, it's valid for those who are praying behind him. But they should not choose him to be the imam. But if it happened, and his salah is valid for him because this is what he can see, what he can recite, which is, we talked about Salatul Ummi, the one that is not able to recite Surah Al-Fatiha. But here, assuming that he knows, so to correct him. Other than Surah Al-Fatiha, it's not wajib. Other than Surah Al-Fatiha, it's not wajib. And Al-Fatih ala al-Imam, not Al-Fatih because a person knows the ayah. Right? Because if someone is in the end of the masjid and his voice is not going to be heard, or they do it in haram sometimes, but when people raising their voice as if the imam is going to hear them, if they make a mistake, this is not to be done, of course. So this is only if there's a benefit in it, and if they know that the imam might be confused or something like this causes more confusion, then they shouldn't, unless it's Surah Al-Fatiha. He says, وَلَا يَفْتَحُ عَلَى غَيْرِ إِمَامِهِ. He should not yaftah, he should not correct anyone other than the imam. How is that? If someone else sitting, not making salah, and he made a mistake while reciting Quran loud. You have a Quran circle, kids are praying, for example, and reciting Quran, and the people are praying in Jama'ah, just for the sake of the example. And he hears someone reciting the Quran, he made a mistake. Should he correct him? That's what is meant here. وَلَا يَفْتَحُ عَلَى غَيْرِ إِمَامِ. He should not make fath on other than his imam. So, but does it invalidate his salah? He says, لأن ذلك يشغله عن صلاته. This is distract him from his salah. فإن فعل لم تبطل. If the person did that in his salah, he corrected someone else other than his imam in the recitation, the salah is not invalid here for the one that did this. He says, قاله في الشرح ابن قدامة. Why? Because he said words, yes, but it's from the words of the salah. He said the words of Quran. So that does not invalidate the salah. Something that shouldn't be done, of course. But where the point here is, and these masail is to discuss whether the salah will be invalid or not. So in this case, the salah is not invalid, but he did something that he shouldn't do. This is with regards to al-fath ala al-imam and the wujub and the non-wajib when it comes to other than Surah Al-Fatiha. طيب, he says وله لبس الثوب أو لف العمامة لأنه صلى الله عليه وسلم التحف بإزاره وهو في الصلاة وحمل أمامة. Now there's movements here has been mentioned in the salah, what is valid and what's not valid. So وله لبس الثوب, for him that means it's valid for him to wear a garment in the salah. If someone had to, and this requires movement, so if he has to wear something, say for example he's praying and it's cold, or a part of his awrah get exposed, and he did something to put a garment on, this is does not break his salah. وله لبس الثوب أو لف العمامة, or the imamah fell, so he put it back on. اللف is to make the circle of the imamah. لأنه صلى الله عليه وسلم, because the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم التحف بإزاره وهو في الصلاة. The Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام wrapped his izar while in salah. He had to fix his izar in the salah. As he mentioned the hadith in the bottom also, that hadith Wa'il ibn Hujr أنه رأى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم رفع يديه حين دخل في الصلاة كبر ثم التحف بثوبه. He entered the salah, then he wrapped his garment around him عليه الصلاة والسلام. وحمل أمامة, and he carried Umama, his granddaughter, in the salah. So this is also movement in the salah. So this is valid, especially if the child will cry, for example, then it's okay to carry him. وفتح الباب لعائشة, and he opened the door for Aisha رضي الله عنها. As Aisha رضي الله عنها, she said, جئت ورسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يصلي في البيت. She came and the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام was praying in the house. And the door was closed. والباب عليه مغلق. فمشى حتى فتح لي. He walked till he opened the door for her. ثم رجع إلى مكانه, then he returned back to his place. ووصفت الباب في القبلة. The bab, the door was in the qibla. So because if he had to walk and turn away from the qibla, that invalidates the salah. But the door is in front of him, so he walked to the door, opened it, and returned back to the salah. وإن سقط رداؤه فله رفعه. And if a person's rida is the upper garment. If it falls, then he can pick it up and put it back on again. All of that to show that some movements in the salah is valid if it's needed. And of course, to avoid all of that is what is best. And as you see the evidences, then it's permissible. That's why it's going to be used later of what breaks the salah from the movement. If the movement is the like of what the Prophet ﷺ did, then this is permissible. Other than that, there are conditions that are going to be mentioned. But we'll take the next one and then we'll stop here, inshallah. He says, وَلَهُ قَتْلُ حَيَّةٍ وَعَقْرَبٍ وَقَمْلٍ وَبَرَاغِيثَ وَنَحْوِهَا لأنه صلى الله عليه وسلم أمر بقتل الأسودين في الصلاة الحية والعقرب رواه أبو داود والترمذي وصححه. The word وَلَهُ, that means it's valid for him. It's permissible for the musalli to kill a snake, a scorpion, and lice. وبراغيث. البرغوث is the one that like very small and it's black. Tick, yes. No, جزاك الله خير. So it's a tick, inshallah. ونحوها, and the like of it. Anything that is harmful, that is biting him in the salah, he can kill that. Mosquito, for example. لأنه صلى الله عليه وسلم, because the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام أمر بقتل الأسودين. He ordered for the people to kill the two blacks in the salah. The two things are al-hayya wal-aqrab, the snake and the scorpion, or the spider. رواه أبو داود والترمذي وصححه. Because they're harmful and they're to be killed whether in the haram or other than the haram. These things are to be killed in any place. Now after that he'll talk about فإن أطال, even though we should finish this part so that we can go to the word ويباح. Should we continue? طيب, let's finish this part inshallah. فإن أطال أي أكثر المصلي الفعل عرفا. Now we're talking about the movements in the salah, that whether it's makruh, whether it's permissible, and now what or how the salah becomes invalid from the movement, other than the movements of the salah. When we read it, you see that more than one thing, not just one thing. فَإِنْ أَطَالَ, that means he made it long. The movement is taken a long time. أي أكثر المصلي, the musalli made lots of movements. الفعل, this movement which is الفعل. عرفا, it looks like he's moving too much. من غير ضرورة, without a necessity. So this is number one. So the fi'l, or the movement that is not part of the salah, is being done a lot, عرفا, to be perceived that doesn't have to be three, because some you would find in the books of fiqh the number three. And the reason why they mention three, because three is plural. So that's why they mention three, but there's no evidence of three movements. So he's moving a lot in the salah, and someone watching, he would say this is lots of movement. So this is فإن أطال أي أكثر المصلي الفعل عرفا من غير ضرورة, there is no necessity. Number two, وكان متواليا لا تفريق. And this lots of movement was متواليا, one after the other. لا تفريق, not separated, not like in the first rak'ah, one movement, in the second rak'ah, two movements, in the third. This is mutafarriq, this is separated. But if it's lots of movement and it's all one after the other in the same rak'ah, for example, then that invalidates the salah. So two things, al-ikthar, lots of movements, and the second thing is mutawali, one after the other. Not that the number of movements in the salah, the entire salah, no, that doesn't count. It's the kathra wa tawali, that means it's one after the other. وكان متواليا بلا تفريق, without separation, بطلت, أي بطلت الصلاة, the salah becomes invalid. ولو كان الفعل سهوا إذا كان من غير جنس الصلاة لأنه يقطع الموالاة. Even if this movement in the salah is sahwan, is forgetfulness, person is not paying attention to what he's doing. Some people, they call it, they have lazma, or they're used to play with their beards or bite their nails, whatever. So without paying attention, he's moving a lot in the salah. Still, it invalidates the salah. إذا كان من غير جنس الصلاة, if it's other than the movements of the salah. لأنه يقطع الموالاة, because that stops the muwalah or the continuity of it. ويمنع متابعة الأركان, and also prevents the person from the arkan, the pillars of the salah, to be continuous. فإن كان لضرورة لم يقطعها. If it's for necessity, then he does not break his salah. Because again, these two things, كثرة والتوالي, lots of movements and it's continuous. But if it was for a ضرورة, for a necessity, then he should not break his salah. Like what? كالخائف. Someone is afraid. He's afraid for his life and he's making salah. He even has the permission to leave the salah, but he's making salah. So moving lots of movements because of a necessity, then it doesn't invalidate the salah. وكذا إن تفرق ولو طال المجموع. And also it doesn't break the salah if the haraka or the fi'l or the actions are متفرقة, is separated, they're not continuous. ولو طال المجموع, even the sum of the movements are so many, but throughout the salah. So again, this is all to explain these two conditions that have to be met. Al-kathra wa tawali, for the salah to be invalid. Lots of movements and they're continuous. This is now when he said al-kathra, what's al-yasir? What's the slight movement in the salah that it does not invalidate it? And the had, the limits has to be set. He said, وَالْيَسِيرُ مَا يُشْبِهُ فِعْلَهُ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم في حمل أمامة. The light movement, which is not too much movement, is the like of the action of the Prophet ﷺ when he carried Umama, his granddaughter. Right? But if someone carries, put it down, carries her like this, playing, maybe moving her, throwing up in the air, and of course, this is lots of movement. The Prophet ﷺ, he carried her. That's it. So that it doesn't stop, so that it stopped crying. وصعود المنبر, going on top of the minbar, ونزوله عنه, and to come down. لما صلى عليه, when the Prophet ﷺ made salah on the minbar to teach the people. So when it was sujood, he went down ﷺ to make sujood. And when he's done with sujood, he went up again on the minbar. So this is movement in the salah. And for a reason, he's teaching the people. وفتح الباب لعائشة, and like opening the door for Aisha رضي الله عنها. I'll just finish 1 minute, inshallah. So وفتح الباب لعائشة, and opening the door for Aisha. This is also movement for a reason, and it did not make him go against the Qibla. وتأخره في صلاة الكسوف ثم عودة, when he was praying صلاة الكسوف عليه الصلاة والسلام, and the hellfire has been presented in front of him, so he walked back عليه الصلاة والسلام, and then he went back forward again. ونحو ذلك. So few steps back and forth. So this is al-haraka al-yasira, that it does not invalidate the salah. Anyone that turns his face, his body away from the qibla, that invalidates the salah, or lots of movement. The last 2 points here in this subject, وإشارة الأخرس ولو مفهومة كفعله. Someone that is akhras. Al-akhras is the one that is mute. He's not able to speak. His ishara, if he makes a sign language, right? ولو مفهومة, if it's understood, is exactly as someone is making movement in the salah. So if someone that is using sign language in the salah, if it's like his actions, that means it invalidates the salah. وإشارة الأخرس كفعله, because he's أخرس, so he's mute. So what he does because he's that like that, constitutes an action. That means he should stay away from it, otherwise that invalidates the salah. ولا تبطل بعمل قلب وإطالة نظر في كتاب ونحو. لا تبطل, the salah does not become invalid by the actions done by the heart, the distractions of the heart. A person is not devoted in the salah, not focused, and he's thinking about all kinds of things. That does not invalidate the salah. It takes away the rewards, but it doesn't invalidate the salah. Also, وإطالة نظر في كتاب, looking for a long time in a book that is opened. And a book or anything written, like for example, like this. And that's why it's best not to be in front of the people in the Qibla, where people can be distracted. If someone would be in Salah looking at the Athkar, for example, and he's not paying attention, so he start reading with his heart. That's what italatu nadar. If he starts speaking out loud, then that means it's invalidates the salah. وإطالة نظر في كتاب, anything that is written, ونحوه, anything else. That does not invalidate the salah, but it takes away, of course, from the rewards and the khushu' of the salah. So this is the kathra and al-yasir, al-kathir wal-yasir, and what invalidates the salah. And before that, some of the makruhat, inshallah. So we stop at what he says, ويباح في الصلاة سواء قراءة أواخر السور. No. No. Right. Someone sneezes and he wants to blow his nose, and right. Even if he does not sneeze and he wants to blow his nose in the salah and he gets a napkin and he does this tissue, that's fine. This is from the normal movement in the salah because it's needed, and it doesn't invalidate the salah. Right. The lines in the masajid is not considered to be sutra. These lines on the floor, this is not sutra. And if a person is praying in the open, there's no sutra for him, there's nothing, no object, then the one that walks in front of him should be far enough that it looks like he's not walking in front of him. Even though they said here ثلاثة أذرع, like meter and a half. Like 2 lines like this, something like this, yes. No. If the jacket is up high from the ground, yes. Yeah, it should be as tall as half of the arm, or the arm, the length of the arm. No. If it's flat down, no, it doesn't count. No. The Imam speaks something else, and that happens. He got angry with the people behind him. Because when people are correcting him, so as he says, khalas, he says something, stop. So that invalidates his salah. It's makruh, but some said that if repeating the Fatiha without a reason invalidates the salah. الأخطاء في الفاتحة, the mistakes in the Fatiha, there's 2 types of mistakes, either jalay or khafi. Al-jalay is the mistakes that changes the meaning. So if the mistake changes the meaning, that invalidates the recitation of Surah Al-Fatiha. People have to correct him. But if it's other mistakes, like the makharij is not very strong, mistakes in even tashkil, but it does not change the meaning, the salah does not break the salah. But any mistakes, then this person should not be the one that lead the people in the salah. So there's difference between appointing an imam that makes mistakes. That's if he makes lots of mistakes other than the Fatiha, that's makruh. But in Fatiha, that's not supposed to be the case. People should not appoint him as imam. But if it happens that he lead a salah, then the salah is valid if the mistakes does not change the meaning of Surah Al-Fatiha. No. With the heavy accent, if it's the words are clear and Surah Al-Fatiha is clear, then it's okay. But then with the salah, if it's as another opinion, if it's valid for himself, then it's valid for them, because this is what he can. This is his capacity. So that means it's valid for them for that particular salah. There is an opinion, I'm not sure if it's in al-madhab, that if the ma'mum corrects the imam, that invalidates the salah, which has no basis to it whatsoever. The hadith is very clear. Other than Surah Al-Fatiha, yeah. No. Especially if a person changes the meaning completely and things like this.
And everybody's reciting, you hear that they made a mistake. The person correcting that, is that what's meant by this?
anyone other than the imam. ولفت على غير إمامه. Someone, if it's someone next to him in the salah and he's reciting loud, I mean, if just like that, and he's correcting him, that's not permissible. Or usually the ulama, they mentioned the example, which is very obvious, someone outside the salah reading Quran loud. So he's correcting him. He's correcting the one that is not praying with him. This is what is meant here. That's why he only يفتح على إمامه, not على غير إمام. And even the Fath, sometimes people in Taraweeh in Ramadan, they will be not praying because the salah is long or resting, whatever in the back, and the imam makes mistake, so they correct him. They're not in the salah and they're correcting the imam. But that's, I mean, it does not invalidate the salah of the imam, of course, and it's for them. Huh? Right. Right. No. For Salatul Tarawih, if the imam skipped something, again, any mistake other than Surah Al-Fatiha, of course the salah is valid. And if he skipped a page or skipped few verses, one of the things that people do, which is not from the Sunnah, because so that they would finish, make sure that they finish the Quran, someone will be recording the mistakes of the imam. And then at the end, they do that in some of the masajid in some parts of the world. Very widespread, actually. And they would have the last day of Ramadan, the imam would recite all of these verses in the salah so that he make up for the things that he missed. So that, no, this is not from the Sunnah. But he would do it in such a way that the salah is valid. Like, for example, he missed one ayah. So he would make two rak'ah or Salatul Isha at the last day or something like this. And he would recite these verses, including the ones that he missed. So that means it's recited in the Salah in Ramadan, so that the khatma of the Quran that means they finish the Quran. Yeah. So that and even some of them, so the bid'ah are endless. But the ulama recorded these bid'ahs in the book. Some people, someone would stand in as a ritual thing in the last day, reciting himself the outside of the salah, the verses that was done by mistake. So that means so that we don't miss the khatma, as they say. No. That means it's the musalli, he should stop the person walking in front of him, whether he's praying fard or praying nafl, whether he has a sutra or whether he doesn't have a sutra. If he has a sutra and someone walks after the sutra, of course, he should not stop them. That's what بين يدي sutra فمر دونها. So the person walked in front of the imam before the sutra. This is where he needs to stop him. أو لم تكن, or أو لم تكن, that means there's no sutra. فمر قريبا منه, and the person passed closer to him, he should also stop him. Even if he's not praying to a sutra, and the one that is coming in front of him, he's coming in a distance that is near to him, he can stop him, then he should. Or should it just... No. That's a good question. For the children from 7 to 10 or all the way till before the age of puberty, if they make lots of movement in the salah and it invalidates the salah, like lots of movement and it's continuous, they're not responsible for their actions yet, but as a way of teaching, then maybe they should repeat the salah so that they don't do it again. It depends on the situation, but here the father or so, he can make it as part of the tarbiyah or the ta'deeb. Not that they're going to be punished as a result of that, they have to repeat the salah, because they're still not responsible for their action. So to teach them, to tell them, and if they do it again, then they have to repeat the salah so that they stop the too much movement. No. Something? صلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم ربنا وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.